Ambassador Olivia Martinez stood at the viewport of the Starweaver, watching Earth grow smaller in the distance. Her heart beat faster as she thought about the responsibility resting on her shoulders. In just a few hours, she would be the first human to meet the Galactic Council's representatives. The Starweaver wasn't a human ship. Its corridors were too tall, its doors oddly shaped, and the air carried a slight scent of sweet flowers. Olivia had spent the last 3 days getting used to the artificial gravity, which was set slightly lower than Earth's to accommodate their alien hosts. Ambassador Zilksith waited in the main conference room. The crystalline being stood nearly 8 feet tall, with a transparent body that caught and reflected light in rainbow patterns. 2 junior aides moved around the room, their crystalline forms tinkling softly as they prepared for the meeting. Ambassador Martinez, a mechanical voice translated as Zilksith, spoke in chimes and bell-like tones. "We welcome you aboard the Starweaver." Olivia smiled, careful not to show her teeth. The protocol officers had warned her that many species found Earth's omnivore dentition unsettling. "Thank you for your hospitality, Ambassador Zilks. We're honored to begin this dialogue between our peoples." The meeting started well. They discussed trade possibilities, cultural exchange programs, and the challenges of integrating Earth into the larger galactic community. Olivia noticed how carefully the crystalline beings moved, how they kept their distance from the walls and furniture. Their bodies, while beautiful, were fragile compared to human bones and flesh. Then it happened. One of the junior aides, carrying a data crystal, stepped too close to a hovering serving tray. The tray's sensors, calibrated for crystalline biology, didn't register the aid properly. It drifted into the young alien's path. Time seemed to slow down for Olivia. She saw the aid stumble, its crystalline form beginning to tilt toward the hard floor. Without thinking, she moved. Her muscles, evolved on Earth's heavy gravity world, launched her across the room faster than any crystalline being could move. Her hands, gentle despite their strength, caught the aid before they could hit the ground. One arm supported their shoulders, the other stabilized their midsection. She held them with the same care she would use to handle a delicate glass sculpture. The room fell silent. The aid's crystalline form trembled slightly in her hands as she carefully helped them regain their footing. "Are you all right?" Olivia asked softly. The aide chimed an affirmative, their inner light pulsing with what Olivia hoped was relief. She stepped back, suddenly aware that every crystalline being in the room was staring at her. Ambassador Zilks moved forward, light patterns dancing through their form. "Remarkable," they chimed. "We were warned about human strength and speed. We were told you came from a high-gravity death world. But no one mentioned how gentle you could be." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. On Earth, we have a saying. The strongest hands can also be the most gentle. We learn to be careful with fragile things. Indeed, Zilks's inner light created a complex pattern that the translator didn't even try to interpret. "Perhaps we have been looking at humans all wrong. We saw your capacity for survival in harsh conditions as something to fear. But now I see it can also make you uniquely suited to protect." The meeting continued, but something had changed. The crystalline beings no longer kept quite so much distance. Sometimes, when they had to move through the room's tight spaces, they would ask Olivia to spot them, trusting her quick reflexes and careful hands to keep them safe. By the end of the day, Olivia had noticed the Galactic Council members exchanging meaningful glances. She hadn't just shown them humanity's diplomatic face. She had demonstrated something far more important. She had shown them that being a Deathworlder didn't mean being dangerous. Sometimes, it meant being better able to keep others safe. Sam Cooper wiped sweat from his forehead as he looked around the massive greenhouse of Centauri Station. The alien plants were beautiful, with leaves in colors he had never seen on Earth, but they were dying. The station's food supplies would run out in 2 months if someone couldn't solve the crisis. The Murex, the station's insectoid botanical team, buzzed around him nervously. Their delicate limbs moved with precise care among their own native plants, but they couldn't keep Earth plants alive. Every time they tried to handle the seedlings, they either crushed them or let them dry out. "Show me again how you plant the wheat," Sam said to Zixta, the lead botanist. Her antenna twitched as she picked up a seed with her precision tools. "We must be very careful," she clicked, her translator making her sound worried. "Earth plants are so dense and require such firm handling. We fear damaging them." Sam watched as she tried to plant the seed, barely pressing it into the soil. He understood the problem now. The Murics were used to plants from low-gravity worlds with delicate cellular structures. They treated Earth plants the same way, not realizing that wheat had evolved to survive much harsher conditions. "May I show you something?" Sam asked. When Zixta nodded, he took a handful of wheat seeds. "Watch my hands carefully." His fingers, thick and strong by their standards, moved with surprising gentleness. He pressed each seed into the soil with just enough force, demonstrating the motion slowly. Earth plants are tough. They need to feel the soil around them, like this, firm but not crushing. The Murics gathered closer, their compound eyes studying his movements. Sam continued planting, row by row, explaining as he worked. "On Earth, we have strong winds and heavy rains. Our plants evolved to handle rough conditions. They're not fragile. They're resilient. But your hands," another botanist clicked. "They are so powerful. How do you avoid crushing everything you touch?" Sam smiled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his mother's old pocket watch. The Murics leaned in as he held it up, letting them see the delicate gears through its glass back. "Look at this. It's over 100 years old. Human hands built it, human hands have wounded it, and human hands have kept it safe all this time. We can be gentle when we need to be." He spent the next few hours teaching them the right pressure for different plants. Earth wheat needed firm soil, but basil seeds wanted just a light covering. Tomato seedlings could handle more movement than they expected, while bean sprouts needed support but not coddling. The Murics learned quickly. By the end of the day, Zixta had successfully transplanted an entire row of tomato seedlings. Her movements were still cautious, but she no longer treated the plants like they would shatter at her touch. "I think I understand now," she said as they watched the station's artificial sunlight dim to simulate evening. "Your strength isn't just about force. It's about control." Sam nodded. "That's right. Being strong doesn't mean you have to use all your strength all the time. Sometimes it means knowing exactly how gentle you need to be." Over the next few weeks, the greenhouse transformed. The wheat grew tall and strong, the tomatoes flowered, and the basil filled the air with its sweet smell. The Murics learned to handle each plant with exactly the right touch, no longer afraid of their own strength. They also stopped flinching when Sam moved quickly or lifted heavy equipment. They had learned what humans had known all along, that hands strong enough to bend metal could also nurture life. By the time the first earth wheat was ready to harvest, the Murics had started calling Sam Gentle Strong in their own language. To them, it was no longer a contradiction. Captain Laura Bennett stood on the bridge of the Starlight, studying the emergency signal from Proxima B's mining colony. Red warning lights flashed across her screens. The colony's reactor was failing, and radiation levels were rising fast. Most alien rescue ships wouldn't survive the approach. Their crews would die from radiation exposure long before they reached the colony. "How many people are still down there?" she asked her first officer, Paul Harris. 53 miners, Paul replied, his face grim. "Mostly Centauri. Their ships can't handle the radiation or the gravity. They're trapped." The Centauri were beautiful beings that looked like they were made of living glass. They were also extremely vulnerable to radiation. Without help, they wouldn't survive another hour. "Plot a course," Laura ordered. "We're going in." The Starlight's engines roared to life. Humans had evolved on a radiation-heavy world with crushing gravity. Their bodies could handle conditions that would kill most alien species. Even so, this rescue would push them to their limits. As they descended through Proxima B's atmosphere, the ship's hull groaned under the gravity. Laura's muscles worked harder just to stay upright. The radiation alarms screamed warnings, but the human crew kept working. Their bodies were already processing and adapting to the radiation levels that would have killed other species instantly. "Colony in sight," Hall reported. "But the landing pad is damaged. We'll have to set down half a mile away and walk to them." Laura nodded. "Get the rescue teams ready. Environmental suits for everyone. We're tough, but let's not take unnecessary risks." The Starlight landed with a heavy thud. Laura led the first rescue team out onto the planet's surface. The gravity made every step feel like walking through deep mud while carrying heavy weights. The radiation burned against their skin, even through their suits. But they kept moving. They found the Centauri huddled in the colony's deepest shelter. The crystalline beings glowed with fear, their translucent bodies showing the dangerous radiation they'd already absorbed. "We're here to help," Laura said softly, knowing the Centauri were terrified of Deathworlders like humans. "We'll carry you to our ship. You'll be safe there." The Centauri looked at each other uncertainly. Then one of them spoke up. "But we are too fragile. Your strength." Laura knelt down slowly. "We know exactly how to handle fragile things. Trust us." The first Centauri stepped forward. Laura lifted them as gently as she would pick up a soap bubble, supporting their crystalline form perfectly. The other humans followed her lead, each one moving with careful precision, despite the crushing gravity and burning radiation. Trip after trip, the humans carried the Centauri through the hostile environment. Their muscles strained, their bodies fought against the radiation, but their hands never trembled, never faltered. Each crystalline being was carried with perfect care. The last group reached the Starlight just as the reactor went critical. Laura made sure every Centauri was safely strapped in before taking off. As they broke atmosphere, she heard singing from the cargo hold, a crystal-clear sound of Centauri joy. Later, in the medical bay, Laura checked on their passengers. The Centauri were recovering, their bodies slowly clearing the radiation. One of them reached out and touched Laura's hand. "We thought humans were dangerous because you could survive what kills us," they chimed softly. "We didn't understand that the same thing that lets you survive also lets you save others." Laura smiled. "That's the thing about being a Deathworlder," she said. "We don't just survive the harsh conditions. We protect others from them too." The Centauri's glow brightened. "Then we are fortunate to have such guardians in the galaxy." Daniel Wright sat in the sunlit classroom of Earth's Interstellar Cultural Center, watching his alien students practice origami. The paper crane in his hands took shape with careful, precise movements. His fingers, strong enough to bend metal, folded the delicate paper with amazing gentleness. A young floatling named Zephyr drifted closer, their cloud-like body swirling with curiosity. "Teacher Wright, how do your hands not tear the paper?" "We were told humans could crush stones." Daniel smiled, holding up his half-finished crane. "We can be strong and gentle at the same time. Here, let me show you something." He walked to the classroom's small garden and picked up a clay pot. With one hand, he squeezed it until it cracked. The students gasped. Then, he reached into his desk and pulled out a bubble wand. He dipped it in soap solution and blew a stream of perfect bubbles that floated around the room. "See, the same breath that can blow out a fire can also make bubbles. The same hands that can break clay can create beauty. It's all about control." His class included students from 12 different species. The floatlings were like living clouds, the crystallites sparkled like diamonds, and the aquarians stayed in floating water spheres. Each one had come to learn about human culture, but they were learning far more than just facts and figures. "Today we're going to try something special," Daniel said. He went to the corner of the room and picked up his guitar. Music is one of the best ways humans express their feelings. The alien students watched in wonder as his fingers moved across the strings. The melody was soft and sweet, filling the room with gentle sounds. Even the crystallites, who usually vibrated nervously around humans, relaxed and swayed to the music. "Would anyone like to try?" Daniel asked, holding out the guitar. A young crystallite named Spark stepped forward, their crystal body chiming with excitement. Daniel showed them how to hold the guitar, how to place their fingers on the strings. "Don't worry about breaking it," he said kindly. "Just feel the music. Let it guide your movements." At first, Spark's touches were too light, barely making any sound. But with Daniel's patient guidance, they found the right pressure. Soon, simple notes rang out, making their crystal body glow with joy. One by one, other students tried the guitar. Daniel helped each one, adjusting his teaching style to match their unique bodies and abilities. The floatlings learned to strum with their misty tendrils, while the Aquarians created interesting sounds by letting water drops fall on the strings. Later that day, they moved on to painting. Daniel showed them how to hold brushes, how to mix colors, how to make both bold strokes and delicate lines. His own painting of Earth's sunset amazed them, not just for its beauty, but for how his strong hands could create such fine details. "But you are a Deathworlder," said an Aquarian student, their water sphere rippling with confusion. "How do you know so much about making beautiful things?" Daniel looked at the art covering the classroom walls. Paintings, origami, woven crafts, all made by human hands. Living on a harsh world taught us to appreciate gentle things even more. We learned to create beauty because we know how precious it is. By the end of the day, the classroom was filled with student artwork. Each piece was different, reflecting their unique perspectives and abilities. But they all shared something. They had been created with the help of human hands, hands that had proved they could nurture creativity just as well as they could survive hardship. As the students left, Zephyr lingered. "I understand now," they said, their cloudy form glowing softly. "Humans aren't just strong. You're strong enough to be gentle." Daniel nodded, carefully placing a finished paper crane on his desk. "That's the most important lesson I can teach you. True strength isn't about what you can break. It's about what you can create and protect." Dr. Michelle Patterson peered through her microscope at the blood sample from the sick luminary child. The small alien's natural glow had dimmed to almost nothing, like so many others affected by the strange plague. The hospital ward was full of luminary children, their light growing weaker each day. The luminary were beautiful beings who looked like they were made of starlight. But now their light was fading, and their own doctors couldn't find out why. They had called Michelle because humans, with their tough immune systems, might understand what was happening. "Look at this," Michelle said to Dr. Lux, her luminary colleague. She stepped back from the microscope. "The infection acts differently in human blood samples." Dr. Lux floated closer, his own light pulsing with interest. When they had first met, he had been afraid to work closely with a human. Now he moved without fear, knowing Michelle's steady hands and careful movements would never put him at risk. "Our immune systems are too gentle," Dr. Lux said sadly. "The infection overwhelms us. But your blood, it fights back." Michelle nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. On Earth, we evolved with all sorts of diseases. Our bodies learned to fight hard. But we also learned something else: how to heal. She pulled up images on her computer screen. They showed how human white blood cells attack the infection. "See how our cells don't just fight. They adapt. They learn. Maybe we can teach your cells to do the same." For the next several hours, Michelle and Dr. Lux worked together. They mixed small amounts of treated human blood with luminary samples, watching how they interacted. Michelle's hands, steady enough to perform the most delicate surgery, carefully handled the tiny samples. "There," she said finally, pointing at the screen. "Look at the luminary cells. They're copying what the human cells do. They're learning to fight back." Dr. Lux glowed brighter with excitement. "Can we use this to make medicine?" Michelle smiled. "Better. We can use it to teach your immune systems to protect themselves. Like a vaccine, but more like gentle training for your cells." They worked through the night, developing the treatment. Michelle's human stamina let her keep going when the luminary doctors needed rest. But she never grew careless, never let her tiredness make her movements less precise. The first patient was a small luminary girl whose light had almost gone out. Michelle helped prepare the treatment, her strong hands extraordinarily gentle as she worked with the delicate equipment. The girl's parents watched nervously as Dr. Lux administered the medicine. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the girl's light began to brighten. By morning, she was glowing stronger than she had in weeks. Her parents' joy lit up the whole room. Over the next few days, more children received the treatment. Each one began to recover, their natural light returning. The hospital ward that had been dim and quiet now sparkled with renewed energy. "We were wrong about humans," Dr. Lux said to Michelle as they watched the children play. "We thought your strong immune systems meant you would bring diseases. Instead, you brought healing." Michelle watched a young luminary float past, glowing brightly. "That's the thing about being from a tough world," she said. "You learn that survival isn't just about being strong. It's about helping others become stronger too." The luminary physicians began training with Michelle, learning how to make and improve the treatment. They no longer saw human toughness as a threat. Instead, they understood that the same strength that let humans survive could also be used to protect and heal others. Peter Martinez stood at the edge of the floating farm on Kepler 186f, watching the storm approach. The sky turned an angry purple, and the light from the red dwarf sun grew dim. He had never seen anything like it on Earth, but he recognized danger when he saw it. The float-wool creatures in the pens began to cry out in fear. They looked like clouds with legs, their bodies made of something between gas and fur. The alien ranchers who usually cared for them had already evacuated. Their light bodies couldn't handle the coming storm's winds. "Don't worry," Peter said to the nearest float-wool, which pressed against his leg in fear. "I'll keep you safe." The storm hit like a hungry beast. Winds howled across the floating platforms, strong enough to tear apart the light materials the aliens used for building. But Peter had grown up on Earth, where hurricanes could flatten cities. His body, evolved to handle Earth's harsh weather, could still move and work in conditions that would scatter the native aliens like leaves. He heard cracking sounds from the fence posts. The float-wool creatures huddled together, their cloudy bodies shivering. Peter knew he had to get them to shelter fast. The main barn was too far, but he spotted a shallow cave in a nearby floating rock formation. "Come on," he called to the creatures, remembering how his grandfather used to herd sheep during storms. He moved slowly but confidently, knowing the float-wool could sense his calmness even in the chaos. One by one, the creatures followed him. His strong hands guided them gently when they strayed, his firm voice keeping them moving in the right direction. The wind tried to blow them away, but Peter used his body as a shield, protecting the delicate creatures from the worst of the storm. A young float-wool stumbled, its misty body starting to break apart in the wind. Peter scooped it up immediately. His hands, calloused from farm work, but gentle with practice, cradled the creature close to his chest. The float-wool's body reformed slowly, comforted by his warmth and protection. They reached the cave just as the storm reached its peak. Peter counted the creatures as they entered. One was missing. Through the howling wind, he heard a faint cry. Without hesitation, he went back out. The wind nearly knocked him down, but his Earth-evolved muscles kept him moving. He found the last float-wool trapped behind a fallen fence panel. The creature was terrified, its cloudy body barely holding together. Peter lifted the fence with one hand, his strength making the task look easy. With his other hand, he gently gathered the frightened creature close. "Easy now," he said softly. "I've got you." Back in the cave, he checked each float-wool for injuries. His hands moved with surprising delicacy for their size and strength, carefully feeling through cloudy wool for any damage. When he found scared ones, he spoke to them softly until they calmed down. The storm raged for hours. Peter stayed awake, watching over his charges. He sang old Earth songs, and surprisingly, the float-wool seemed to like them. Their cloudy bodies pulsed in rhythm with his voice. When the alien ranchers returned after the storm, they found all their floatwools safe and calm. The creatures crowded around Peter, their bodies glowing with trust and affection. "We didn't think humans could handle such delicate beings," one rancher said, her translator voice full of wonder. "Their bodies are barely more than mist." Peter smiled, stroking a floatwool that had fallen asleep against his leg. Being strong doesn't mean you have to be rough. Sometimes the strongest person can also be the gentlest shepherd. Ambassador Olivia Martinez stood before the Galactic Council again, but this time everything was different. 6 months had passed since her first meeting, and now the great chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species. Even the crystalline beings no longer kept their distance from her. "Honored council members," she began, her voice clear and calm. "When humans first joined the galactic community, many feared us. They called us Deathworlders, thinking our strength made us dangerous. Today, I want to show you what that strength has really meant for our galaxy." The massive screen behind her lit up with images. First came pictures of the Centauri Station's greenhouses, now bursting with life. Sam Cooper stood among the Murex botanists, teaching them how to transplant Earth tomatoes with careful hands. "Our strength lets us handle things others find difficult," Olivia explained. "But it also teaches us control and how to be gentle with fragile things." The next images showed the Starlight's rescue mission. Crystal beings watched in wonder as recordings played of human crews carrying them through radiation and gravity that would have killed most species. "Yes, we can survive harsh conditions," Olivia continued. "But more importantly, we can protect others from them." She showed scenes from Earth's Interstellar Cultural Center, where Daniel Wright's students created art and music. The council members murmured in appreciation at the sight of alien hands learning to paint and play instruments under human guidance. Our adaptability isn't just about survival. It's about creating beauty and sharing it with others. The screen changed to show Dr. Michelle Patterson working with the luminary. The before and after images of the recovered children drew gasps from the audience. Their renewed glow lit up the pictures like captured starlight. Our tough immune systems don't just protect us from disease. They help us find ways to protect everyone. Finally, she showed the footage from Kepler 186f. Peter Martinez appeared, guiding frightened floatwool to safety through the storm. The council watched as his strong hands gently cradled the misty creatures, keeping them safe and calm. "This is what being a Deathworlder truly means," Olivia said. "We're not just survivors. We're protectors, caregivers, teachers, healers." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes and sensory organs of each council member. "Every ability that helps us survive our harsh world also lets us help others. Our strong hands can create art. Our tough bodies can carry those who need shelter. Our adaptable immune systems can help find cures." The crystalline elder floated forward, their form catching the light. "When humans first came to us, we feared their power. Now we understand. True strength isn't about destruction. It's about protection." The luminary representative glowed in agreement. "They taught us that being strong enough to survive also means being strong enough to be gentle." A floatwool rancher drifted up. "Our young ones no longer fear humans. They see them as guardians." Olivia smiled, thinking of all the humans working throughout the galaxy, using their Deathworld strength in ways their ancestors never imagined. "We learned something too," she said. "On Earth, we thought our adaptations were just for survival. But out here among the stars, we found a better use for them." The council chamber filled with light and color as all the species signaled their agreement. Together, they voted to officially recognize humans not just as members of the galactic community, but as its protectors. As Olivia left the chamber, she saw a young crystalline being trying to learn origami from a human teacher. Their delicate crystal hands folded the paper carefully, while the human's strong fingers guided them with infinite gentleness. In that simple scene, she saw the future they had all been working toward, one where strength and gentleness worked together in perfect harmony.